I used to believe my life was something out of a picture-perfect family drama. A devoted husband, a father to 3 wonderful kids, a provider who worked his ass off to ensure they had every opportunity one never did. I wasn't rich, but I had built a damn good life. A house in a quiet neighborhood, a steady job that paid well, a wife who, despite the occasional fights, had been my partner for over 20 years. And then, there was my brother Jake. Jake had always been around. He was 5 years younger than me, the reckless, charming one, the golden boy who never seemed to face the same struggles I did. While I spent my 20s busting my back to build a future, Jake was always there, slipping into our home like a permanent fixture. My kids adored him. Hell, sometimes it felt like they looked up to him more than me. He took them to the movies, brought them gifts, even helped them with school projects when I was too busy working late. It never occurred to me to question it. He was my brother. What kind of man doubts his own blood? My wife, Laura, never seemed to mind how close Jake was to our family. If anything, she encouraged it. "You should be happy they have an uncle who cares," she'd say whenever I brought it up. "Not everyone is that lucky." And she was right. So I never thought twice about the way he was always there, the way my kids' eyes lit up when he walked through the door, the way Laura always seemed to be in a better mood after his visits. I worked long hours, sometimes weekends. It was necessary. I had college savings to build, bills to pay, and a retirement to consider. I told myself it was all worth it. Every late night, every missed recital, every dinner eaten alone in the office. I was securing my family's future. I was being the man I thought a husband and father should be. But then there was that feeling, a nagging sensation, like a whisper at the back of my mind. It had been there for years, unshakable, but never enough to confront. Little things. The way Laura sometimes tensed when I brought up work trips, almost like she was relieved when I was gone. The way my youngest son once mentioned, "Uncle Jake always tucks us in when you're not home," with a tone that made something shift uncomfortably in my gut. The way my daughter once joked, "You know, Dad, sometimes it feels like we have 2 fathers." I laughed it off. Of course, they felt that way. Jake was the fun one, the one who had time, the one who wasn't exhausted from pulling overtime and managing finances. I told myself that's all it was. I had to. Because to consider anything else, to let the thought even enter my mind, would have meant questioning everything. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I never meant to take the test. It wasn't some paranoid suspicion, no gut-wrenching moment of doubt that made me question my children's parentage. No, it was just a routine medical checkup. My doctor suggested it after I mentioned some family history of genetic disorders. "Standard precaution," he said. "It might help your kids down the line." That was all it took for me to go through with it. Because that's what a responsible father does, right? He looks out for his children. He plans ahead. The kit sat on my desk for weeks before I finally got around to it. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I swabbed my cheek, sealed the envelope, and sent it off without a second thought. It was supposed to be a formality, just another item checked off my endless to-do list. 2 weeks later, I got the email. I was at work, sitting in my car, finishing a sandwich before heading back inside. I opened my phone absent-mindedly, scrolled through junk emails, and almost missed it. "Your DNA results are in." I clicked it open, not expecting anything remotely interesting. But then I saw it. 0% probability of paternity. I blinked. My mind didn't process it at first. I scrolled back up, expecting to see some disclaimer about an error. But no, the report was crystal clear. There was no genetic link between me and my children. The sandwich turned to sawdust in my mouth. My first thought? This has to be a mistake. I refreshed the page. I logged out and back in. I scrolled through the document again, looking for some reassurance that I had misread it. But the numbers didn't change. 0, 0, 0. My stomach lurched. My hands felt numb. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to process what I was looking at. This wasn't possible. It had to be an error. Some glitch at the lab. Maybe they mixed up my sample with someone else's. I closed the email and forced myself to breathe. Don't overreact. There was an explanation for this. Had to be. That night, I ordered another test from a completely different company. Paid extra for expedited processing. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was nothing but a lab mistake. But deep down, something was unraveling. The test arrived within days. I rushed through the process, double-checking every instruction, making sure there was no chance of contamination, no way for another mix-up. I even drove the sample to the post office myself, watching the clerk scan it in like my life depended on it. And then, I waited. 5 days. 5 excruciating days where I barely ate, barely slept. I found myself staring at my kids over dinner, searching for something, anything, that might confirm what I already knew but refused to believe. I hated myself for even thinking it. They were my kids. I had raised them. I had tucked them in at night. I had held them as babies, kissed their scraped knees, cheered at their soccer games. But then the email came. This time, I didn't open it right away. My hands hovered over my phone, heart hammering so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Finally, I tapped the screen. 0% probability of paternity. It felt like the world stopped. My vision blurred. My breath caught in my throat. I read the words over and over again, willing them to change. But they didn't. Not one. Not two. All 3 of my children weren't mine. My mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. Infertility? A bizarre genetic anomaly? But no. There was only one possibility. Laura had been lying to me. For how long? Since the beginning? Had my entire marriage been a lie? My stomach twisted violently, and I barely made it to the bathroom before I was throwing up, heaving until there was nothing left. My body rejected the truth before my brain could even fully process it. I stumbled back into the bedroom, clutching my phone like it was a ticking bomb. I could hear my wife moving around downstairs, humming softly to herself. How could she be so calm? How could she go about her day like she hadn't just detonated my entire existence? And then the final, crushing thought hit me. If they weren't mine, then whose were they? I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't. For hours, I sat in the dark, gripping the edges of the DNA test results like they might crumble if I let go. My fingers felt numb. My chest was hollow. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a noose. Laura was downstairs, probably scrolling through her phone, maybe sipping tea like it was just another ordinary night. Like she wasn't a liar. Like she hadn't built our entire marriage on deceit. I couldn't look at the results anymore. My mind already had them memorized. 0% probability. 3 children. None of them mine. I forced myself to stand, my legs weak beneath me. The anger was there, boiling, violent. But beneath it was something else. A terror I couldn't name. Because the truth wasn't just that my wife had cheated. That would have been simple. That would have been survivable. No. The real horror was that she had done it for years. Decades. I walked downstairs slowly, gripping the wooden banister hard enough to leave marks in my palm. My heart slammed against my ribs. I passed the family photos lining the staircase, smiling Christmas mornings, summer vacations, birthday parties. I had been happy in those pictures. Blind. A fool. She looked up when I entered the kitchen, her lips parting slightly in surprise. She was leaning against the counter, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. The same one she used to sleep in when we were younger. Something inside me twisted. I walked straight to the dining table and dropped the papers in front of her. Read them. Laura frowned, the slight crinkle in her forehead almost making her look innocent. Almost. She reached for them lazily, flipping through the pages. I watched her face. Every muscle. Every flicker of emotion. Her eyes froze on the results. I saw it. The way the color drained from her skin, the way her lips parted, just barely. She wasn't confused. She wasn't shocked. She was caught. She swallowed. Looked up at me. What is this? My pulse pounded in my ears. Don't do that. My voice was low, hoarse. Don't pretend you don't know. She set the papers down carefully, smoothing out the edges. Her hands were steady. Too steady. Say something, I demanded. Nothing. Just silence. I slammed my fist against the table, making the plates rattle. Say something, Laura. She inhaled slowly. I don't know what you want me to say. My vision blurred with rage. How about the truth? My voice cracked. I barely sounded like myself. How about explaining how you lied to me for 20 years? She exhaled through her nose. I didn't lie to you. The words were so absurd, I almost laughed. You didn't. I shook my head, stepping back, running a hand through my hair. I felt like I was going to be sick. None of them are mine. Do you get that? Not one. My voice rose, cracking. And you're sitting here telling me you didn't lie? She pressed her lips together. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She wasn't denying it. Not once had she said, "This isn't true." Not once had she tried to argue, to gaslight me into believing I had it wrong. Because she knew I didn't. She had known this day would come. Who? My voice was barely more than a whisper now. She blinked. I leaned over the table. Who, Laura? She looked away. Her fingers twitched against the papers. A new, sharper dread clawed at my chest. I had assumed the answer was some long-gone affair partner, a stranger. Someone I could hate, someone I could erase. But the way she was acting, my mouth went dry. It was someone I knew. My stomach turned to ice. I could barely breathe. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Jake." The room spun. I grabbed the back of a chair, my knees threatening to give out. No. I had prepared myself for an answer that would hurt. But not this. Not him. Not my own brother. My hands started shaking. Say it again. Laura's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just whispered it one more time. "Jake." A sound ripped from my throat. Something raw, something that didn't feel human. I stumbled back, knocking into the kitchen island. The world blurred, the walls closing in. My brother. My brother. A choked laugh bubbled out of me, sharp and broken. How long? My voice was barely my own. How fucking long, Laura? She looked down. The answer was clear. The entire marriage. I gripped the edge of the counter, my nails digging into the wood. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Everything. The family, the life, the children I had raised, the love I had given her. It had all been built on a lie. A lie my own brother had helped her create. I saw Laura watching me. Her face was unreadable now. Cold. Like she had already accepted this truth long before I had. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say. I don't remember walking back upstairs. I don't remember sitting on the edge of our bed, gripping my phone so tightly. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears, loud and uneven, like a war drum signaling the end of everything I knew. Jake. My own brother. I stared at his name on my contact list, my thumb hovering over the call button. The rational part of my brain told me to wait, to process, to breathe. But there was nothing rational left in me. I hit dial. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. My leg bounced violently as I gritted my teeth, rage curling in my gut like a snake ready to strike. "Yo, what's up?" Jake's voice was light, casual. Like he hadn't gutted my entire existence. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "Where are you?" He hesitated. Home." "Why?" I forced air into my lungs. My voice was tight, barely contained. "I need you to answer something for me." There was a pause. "All right." I gripped the phone harder. "Are you the father of my children?" Silence. I heard his breathing shift, just barely. That 1 second of hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "What the hell are you talking about?" he finally said, a weak laugh trailing at the end. "Man, have you been drinking or something?" "Lie." I stood up, pacing the room. My hands were shaking, my vision tunneling. "Cut the bullshit, Jake." I spat his name like it was poison. "I took a DNA test. 2 of them. I'm not their father." "But you already knew that, didn't you?" His breath hitched. I smiled bitterly. "Yeah, that's what I thought." "Look, man, you're not making any sense." I cut him off. "Say it. Say it to my face, you coward." A long, excruciating silence stretched between us. My pulse hammered, my skin burned, my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. And then, finally, he exhaled. "I never wanted to hurt you." The words were quiet, hesitant. Something inside me snapped. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, is that right?" My voice was shaking now, pure venom dripping from every syllable. "You stole my entire goddamn life, Jake. You fucked my wife. You had 3 kids with her behind my back. But hey, at least you didn't mean to hurt me." He sighed. "It just happened. It just happened." My entire body went still. The words echoed in my skull, bouncing off the jagged edges of my rage, my grief, my complete and utter humiliation. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until my nails dug into my palm. "How long?" My voice was eerily calm, detached. "What?" I pressed my forehead against the wall, breathing through my nose. "How long, Jake? How many years did you sneak around behind my back? How many nights did you spend in my bed when I was working overtime to provide for your kids? He hesitated again. I don't know, man. I laughed, shaking my head. You don't know. My voice rose. You don't know. Look, I'm sorry, all right? But it's not like you ever suspected anything. I mean, come on, man. You were always busy. Always working. Always stressed out. She. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at it like it was a living thing, like it might explode in my hand. I couldn't listen to another goddamn second. I hung up. The second the call ended, my stomach twisted violently. I barely made it to the bathroom before I was hunched over the toilet, dry heaving until my ribs ached. He wasn't sorry. He had never been sorry. And neither had she. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, my breath ragged. I could still hear the echo of his voice in my head. It just happened. No, Jake. You made it happen. I stumbled back into the bedroom, gripping the edge of the dresser to steady myself. The walls felt like they were closing in. Laura was still downstairs, waiting. I forced myself to move. Step by step, down the hallway, down the stairs, until I stood in the doorway of the kitchen. She was exactly where I left her, sitting at the table, hands folded neatly over the test results. Her wedding ring caught the light. I swallowed hard. How long? My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. She didn't blink, didn't hesitate. The entire marriage. The air was sucked from my lungs. I staggered back a step, gripping the doorframe. My head swam. My knees buckled. 20 years. My entire adult life. She had never been mine. The kids had never been mine. I had built a life, a future, a family, on a foundation of lies. Laura exhaled softly, like she was relieved to finally say it out loud. I stared at her, at the woman I had loved for decades, and felt nothing but a cold, creeping emptiness. I had lost everything, but I wasn't going down alone. The days blurred together. I don't remember sleeping. I don't remember eating. I don't remember much of anything except the way the world had collapsed around me, the way every conversation, every memory, every piece of my so-called life felt like a cruel, elaborate joke. I barely left the house. I called in sick to work, not because I was sick, but because if I stepped into that office, I might end up smashing my desk into splinters. I couldn't function, couldn't think beyond the simple, horrifying reality that I had wasted 20 years on a family that was never mine. And yet, the world outside kept moving. Laura carried on as if nothing had changed. She cooked. She did laundry. She sent me casual texts. Can you pick up milk? Your son needs help with his homework. Your son. The audacity of it made me sick. And then there were the kids. They didn't know. They had no idea that everything they believed about their lives, their father, their family, was a lie. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't even be in the same room. Because they weren't mine. I had spent decades working myself to the bone for them, saving every extra dime for their futures. And they, without knowing the truth, had the nerve to start asking about those futures now, like nothing had happened. It started small. Dad, did you send out my college applications yet? My eldest, the one I had been so damn proud of. Then my daughter. Hey, can we start looking at venues for my wedding? Jake said he'd help, but I want your opinion too. And the worst one, my youngest. The one I had held in my arms, rocked to sleep, whispered bedtime stories to. He looked up at me one night, pure innocence in his eyes, and said, Dad, when can we go test drive cars for my 16th birthday? You promised. I had promised. I had promised a lot of things. Laura, of course, had the audacity to act like she still had a say in what I did with my money. One night, she sat across from me at the dinner table like nothing had changed, stirring her tea with a slow, deliberate motion. We should probably finalize the payments for Olivia's wedding. Deposits are due soon. I just stared at her. She set her cup down, meeting my gaze like I was the problem here. What? I felt something inside me shift, crack. You expect me to pay for their weddings? Their college? After what you did? She rolled her eyes. Rolled her fucking eyes. They're still your children. Silence. A slow, stretching silence that filled every inch of my body, of my soul, until all I could hear was the dull ringing in my ears. They're still your children. They're still your children. I could have laughed. Could have screamed. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. No, Laura. They're not. Her expression hardened. You raised them. I smiled, but there was nothing kind about it. I raised someone else's kids. I paid for someone else's kids. I gave up my time, my energy, my fucking life for his kids. I shook my head. Not anymore. Her lips parted slightly, just enough for me to see the first flicker of panic beneath her composed facade. Good. I pushed back my chair and stood, grabbing my plate and walking to the sink. Where are you going? She asked, voice carefully measured. I turned the water on, rinsing off my plate. My hands were steady. My voice was ice cold. To make some calls. About what? I dried the plate, set it on the rack. Then I turned, looking her dead in the eyes. Fixing my mistake. She didn't understand yet. But she would. Because I had made a decision. They would get nothing. Not a cent. Not a college fund. Not a wedding budget. Not a car. Not a goddamn thing. I was done being a fool. I had spent 20 years being played. Now, it was my turn. I was done being a fool. The moment Laura said they're still your children, something inside me died. The last shred of obligation, the last lingering thread tying me to this farce of a family, it snapped clean. I owed them nothing. And I meant to make sure they got exactly that. The first call I made was to my lawyer. I didn't even sit down for it. I paced the room, my grip on the phone so tight my fingers went numb. The moment he picked up, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I need to know how fast I can move my assets, I said, voice cold, measured. College funds, joint accounts, everything I have in my name. There was a pause. Oh, okay, let's slow down a second. You want to move all your money? Yes. And you're sure that's a good idea? I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temple. Just tell me what I need to do. Another pause, longer this time. Then, all right. If the accounts are in your name, you can withdraw at will. Joint accounts will need strategy. I don't care about joint accounts, I snapped. She can have them. I just want my money out. He didn't ask questions. I think he heard something in my voice, something dangerous, something final. We worked through the logistics. Most of the kids' college funds were in accounts solely under my name, because I was the only one who ever gave a damn about their futures. I had set them up years ago, telling myself I was investing in something worthwhile, that one day they'd thank me. But now, they could ask Jake for the money. The next call was to my accountant. I scheduled withdrawals, expedited transfers. I had to move fast, before Laura got even a whiff of what was happening. By noon the next day, every college savings account was drained. By 3, my personal savings were emptied, funneled into places she couldn't touch. By 5, I had left work early to finalize everything. I walked into the bank like a ghost, like a man executing a plan that had been years in the making, except I had only decided it last night. The teller gave me a hesitant look as I filled out the paperwork. Are you sure you want to withdraw everything, sir? I smiled. Yes. Every last cent. By the time I walked out, my accounts were barren. I checked my phone. Still no messages. They didn't know yet. Good. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My chest burned with something ugly, something almost exhilarating. For the first time since my world shattered, I was in control. And the best part? They had no idea. Laura had spent decades thinking I was predictable, that I would do what was expected, that I would stay. She thought I would just accept this, keep being the ATM, the sucker. Not anymore. I parked the car and walked inside like nothing had changed. Laura was in the kitchen, sipping her tea like always. She looked up and smiled faintly. Long day? I set my keys down, shrugged. Yeah, you know how it is. She nodded. And just like that, I knew. She still had no clue. The house was quiet. The kids were upstairs, probably on their phones, planning their futures. Their college dorms, their dream weddings, their next vacations paid for by me. They still thought they had it all. But when the time came, they would get nothing. Not a dime. Not a loan. Not a single goddamn thing. And when they finally realized what I had done, it would already be too late. It was time to burn it all down. I wasn't just walking away, I was going to ruin them. The morning after I emptied the accounts, I met with my lawyer in person. I had barely slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt alive. Focused. Like every step I took was dragging me closer to the vengeance I'd been starving for. He sat across from me, scanning the thick file of documents I had dropped onto his desk. divorce papers, evidence of fraud, copies of the DNA tests, a timeline of 20 years of deception. When he finally looked up, he let out a slow breath. Jesus Christ. I just stared at him. I want a lawsuit. Not just a divorce. I want to bury them. He nodded slowly, flipping through the files again. You have a case for fraud. Legally, if she knew you weren't the biological father and still let you financially support them under false pretenses, you could argue damages. I don't want to argue. I want to win. His lips pressed into a thin line. All right. Here's what we do. We file for divorce immediately, but we also bring a separate lawsuit for fraud and emotional distress. Your brother is named as a co-defendant. The word defendant tasted good. How public will this be? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. If we file this aggressively? Very public. It'll be in court records. If reporters pick it up. Good. He hesitated. Are you sure? This is going to get ugly. I smiled. It's already ugly. He nodded. I'll have the papers drawn up today. She'll be served within 48 hours. I was at work when I got the call. Laura had been served at home. I could picture it perfectly. The knock at the door. The confused look on her face when she opened it to find a legal courier standing there, envelope in hand. The slow realization as she unfolded the papers, as the words fraud, emotional distress, damages sank in. And then, the screaming. Because Laura did scream. I knew because she called me 30 seconds after getting the papers, her voice rabid through the phone. What the hell is this? I let her rant. Let her scream. Let her curse. Let her lose her mind. I barely heard a word of it. I just listened to the sound of her world falling apart. Then, when she finally stopped to catch her breath, I spoke. It's justice, Laura. My voice was calm. Cold. Nothing left to give. You can't do this to me. I already did. You're insane. No, I was a fool, I corrected. Now I'm just making things right. She sucked in a breath, ready to launch another attack, but I hung up before she could get the words out. She wasn't my problem anymore. Jake was next. His papers were served at his job. In front of everyone. A coworker, someone I didn't know, but would forever be grateful for, caught a picture of him getting served and posted it online. A neat little caption underneath. When karma finally hits. It spread. And soon, people started talking. It took less than 24 hours for Jake's wife to find out. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard she didn't just throw him out. She lit his shit on fire in the front yard. Clothes, pictures, gifts, everything. By the time I checked social media, his entire life was unraveling in real time. His wife had posted screenshots of my lawsuit, my DNA tests, my divorce papers. The caption? My husband had 3 kids with my brother-in-law's wife. While I was raising his children, he was screwing her. It was brutal, and I loved every second of it. By the end of the week, Jake lost his job. Turns out, companies don't love hiring people who make national headlines for betraying their own family. Laura's life wasn't any better. Our friends, our mutual friends, turned on her fast. The invitation stopped. The polite smiles vanished. People whispered when she walked into grocery stores, when she picked up coffee, when she sat alone at our favorite diner. I didn't have to destroy her. She had already done that to herself. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The knock came late at night. I had been expecting it. The house was empty now. The walls felt wider, the echoes louder. No laughter. No arguing. No warmth. Just silence. I had grown to like it. The knocking turned frantic. Then the doorbell. Then voices. I walked slowly to the door, exhaling. My hands were steady. My heartbeat didn't race. The rage that had once burned inside me had cooled to something else entirely, something colder. I opened the door. There they were. All 3 of them. My children. No, not mine. The youngest was crying. My daughter's makeup was streaked with tears. My eldest, always the calm one, looked like he had just crawled out of a wreckage. Behind them, Laura stood with swollen eyes, her hands trembling. They must have just found out. I waited. The eldest spoke first. His voice cracked. Dada. I held up a hand. He wasn't allowed to call me that anymore. His breath hitched. He swallowed hard. I mean, listen. We didn't know, okay? We had no idea. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them. I didn't say a word. The youngest wiped his nose on his sleeve. Please don't do this. You raised us, right? That has to mean something. The past me, the weak, naive version of myself, would have broken at those words. Would have let the weight of their voices, their faces, their pleas sink into his skin. Would have questioned everything. That man was dead. I stared at them, at these strangers standing on my porch, asking for something they didn't deserve. They weren't here for me. They were here because their world had collapsed. The money was gone. The college funds? Erased. The wedding budgets? Vanished. The security they had counted on? Destroyed. And now they wanted me to fix it. I am not your father. The words came out even, emotionless. Like I was reading off a script. The daughter let out a soft, pained gasp, like the reality had just now settled in her chest. You don't mean that. I tilted my head. I do. Laura finally spoke, voice desperate, hoarse. They didn't ask for this. I looked at her. This woman I had once loved. The woman who had stood beside me for decades while lying through her teeth, letting me waste my life on her secret. I didn't ask for it either. Her face twisted. She took a shaky step forward. Please. We can work something out. The kids. I cut her off. They aren't my kids. The daughter sobbed into her hands. The youngest looked up at me, raw desperation on his face. You can't just leave us. I sighed, rubbing my temple. Do you have any idea how much I sacrificed for you? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. How many years I spent working myself to the bone to give you a future that wasn't even mine to give. The eldest stepped forward, his jaw tight. So that's it? You just walk away. I smiled bitterly. Exactly. He shook his head, his anger replacing the grief. You're a coward. I laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised even me. Coward? No. A coward is a man who lets another raise his kids because he's too weak to face the consequences of his own actions. Silence. Laura's lip trembled. I never wanted this. I met her gaze and shrugged. Neither did I. And then I shut the door. I heard it. The muffled cries, the gasping breaths, the disbelief. I locked it. Then I turned and walked away. I never looked back. I watched my old life burn from a distance. The divorce dragged through the courts like a slow, agonizing death. Laura fought, of course. She tried to take everything she could, tried to spin it like she was the victim. But no matter how much she cried in front of the judge, no matter how many times she played the poor, betrayed wife, she couldn't rewrite reality. She had committed fraud. I had the DNA tests, the financial records, 2 decades of lies. The court didn't rule in her favor. She got nothing. The house had to be sold. The kids? Grown adults now, legally, financially, not my responsibility. I heard through mutuals that she was drowning. No more comfortable life. No more security. No more easy, predictable husband footing the bill while she played the loving wife. And Jake? That was the real show. Losing his job was just the beginning. His wife left him. His in-laws disowned him. His own parents refused to speak to him. I never saw him again. I never wanted to. Instead, I focused on the final step, my escape. I wasn't staying here. Not in the city that had seen me humiliated. Not in the house where I had once felt safe, where I had sat at the head of a table feeding children that weren't mine. I had no attachments left, no roots. So I started dismantling everything. I took out cash, large amounts, carefully, in ways that wouldn't trigger red flags. I sold off my remaining assets, liquidating everything I could. Then, I erased myself. Social media? Deleted. Work? Resigned. Emails? Burned. One by one, I severed every tie to the person I used to be. Then, one morning, I walked away. No announcement. No goodbyes. No forwarding address. Just silence. By the time they realized I was gone, I was already nowhere. I had one last thing to do before I disappeared forever. It wasn't enough to walk away. They needed to understand. They needed to feel the weight of what they had done to me. So, before I left town, I prepared a final package, a neatly assembled box, small and unassuming, but heavier than anything they had ever held. Inside, I placed copies of everything. The DNA test results, the bank statements showing the withdrawals, the divorce papers, the lawsuit filings, the receipts of every single dollar I had ever spent on them, for someone else's children. And on top, resting above the wreckage of 20 years of lies, was a single handwritten letter. It wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It was final. I loved you as my own, but I was never your father. And now, I never will be. No anger. No hatred. Just truth. I sealed the box, addressed it to my children, and left it with a courier. By the time they opened it, I would be long gone. But I could imagine their faces. The slow unraveling of everything they had taken for granted. The realization that the man they had spent their lives calling Dad had erased himself from their world. They had expected safety, support, a future paid for. Instead, they got nothing. And the best part? They had no one to blame but themselves. They tried to find me. At first, it was just calls, missed numbers, voicemails I never listened to. Then emails, long, desperate walls of text from my eldest, my daughter, even my youngest. I didn't read them. I didn't have to. I already knew what they would say. We didn't know. We're sorry. Please come back. But I was done. I had spent 20 years giving them everything. And in return, I had been lied to, used, humiliated. They didn't deserve my time. They didn't deserve closure. Laura took the divorce hard. Or so I heard. She fought in court until she had nothing left to fight for. She couldn't afford the house after I cut off the money. The only place left for her to go was back to her parents. The same small-town house she had tried so hard to leave behind when she married me. I imagined her there, alone. No husband. No financial security. No future. Jake had it worse. After his wife threw him out, he bounced from couch to couch. No one wanted him. Not our parents. Not our relatives. No friends willing to risk associating with him. A brother who betrays his own blood isn't a man anyone respects. I pictured him, jobless, homeless, staring at his phone, wondering if I would pick up, wondering if there was some way to undo the wreckage. There wasn't. As for my kids, reality hit them fast. They had never worried about money before. Never thought twice about tuition payments or bills. They had expected me to cover it all, like I always had. But there was no trust fund, no savings, no safety net. They were on their own. And that was exactly where they deserved to be. The calls slowed. The emails stopped. Eventually, I faded into the past. And that was exactly where I belonged. The sun is warm. The waves roll in, slow and steady, the sound rhythmic, hypnotic. The kind of peace I never knew I needed. I take a sip of my drink, the condensation cool against my fingertips. The sky is endless here, stretched out like a canvas untouched by the chaos I left behind. No expectations. No obligations. No lies. No one knows me here. I wake up when I want. I eat when I want. I have no schedule, no deadlines, no demands. For the first time in 20 years, I belong to no one. I glance at my phone, turning it over in my palm. The only connection left to the life I walked away from. It rarely rings anymore. Most of them gave up. But today, a single notification lingers on the screen. A message. From my eldest. I don't open it. I don't need to. It's either an apology or another plea. Maybe they finally understand what they lost. Maybe they don't. Either way, it doesn't matter. I press down on the screen, hover over the options for a brief moment, then delete it. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of salt and something new. Something untouched by the past. I set my phone down, lean back in my chair, and close my eyes. I am free. And for the first time in my life, the silence feels good.